Have you ever asked for help learning math and walk away disappointed? Maybe you asked a friend how to study geometry and she handed you a book that felt dry and lifeless. Or you searched online for a simple explanation of a theorem and ended up more confused than before. Or maybe you sat in a class listening to a professor whose words just floated past you and you wondered, am I the problem? But then, sometimes it goes the other way. You stumble on a short video where a friend explains an idea in 10 seconds, and suddenly the clouds part. Everything makes sense. And you think, why couldn't it have been taught this way all along? If you've felt either of those extremes, the frustration and the clarity, then you might find my thesis interesting. Before learning math, or anything really, it helps to know why you want to learn it. Now, that sounds like common sense, almost trivial, but like most obvious truths, its value lies in how you live it. So today, I want to share the different motivations that have driven me to learn math, how misunderstanding them once led me astray, and how understanding them brought me back to joy and purpose. When I was a child, math was already part of my world, but I never asked myself why. My parents valued knowledge above all else. The easiest way to please them was to act smart. Teachers said I had a natural talent for logic and numbers. Whether that talent was natural or nurtured, I couldn't tell. But I learned early that being smart earned me admiration, and admiration felt wonderful. So I built my identity around it. I wasn't just me anymore. I was the smart kid. And that became my first motivation for learning. Ego. Ego is powerful. It can drive you to achieve remarkable things, but it builds a fragile foundation. When your worth depends on always being clever, failure becomes unbearable. I remember feeling anxious before exams, not because I feared failing the class, but because I feared failing myself. If I didn't do well, would I still be the smart one? That's the trap of ego driven learning. You study not to learn, but to protect an image. I started avoiding difficult topics, afraid of looking stupid. I dismissed others' achievements just to feel superior. I picked subjects that sounded impressive rather than ones that truly interested me. Unchecked ego is like the dark side of the force. It makes you feel powerful, but it turns you cruel, cruel to others, and especially cruel to yourself. The cure, I learned, was humility. I began keeping a little journal, not of scores I got, but of problems I tried. That a small change shifted everything. I began to chase progress instead of perfection, curiosity instead of pride. And once I loosened my grip on the need to appear smart, something new began to emerge. I started to enjoy competing. Competition felt like a natural next step. If I wasn't chasing praise anymore, maybe I could chase improvement. So I joined the school math contests. The thrill of facing tough problems, the tension, the countdown, the feeling of being tested. It was exhilarating. At first, competition and ego looked identical, but they're not. When you compete to feed your pride, losing devastates you. When you compete to test your limits, losing teaches you. I start to see that I wasn't competing against others. I was competing with them. Their success pushed me higher. The rule of competition is simple. You only get better by facing stronger opponents. In math, those opponents are problems. the right kind of problems. Too easy and you stay stagnant. Too hard and you lose heart. The sweet spot lies right in between, where you fail just often enough to grow. But competition can burn you out if every session feels like a final match. So I learned to cycle. Intense bursts of problem solving, followed by slow study and reflection. That rhythm turned competition from anxiety into fuel, and slowly something changed again. I noticed I wasn't counting points anymore. I'd stay with a problem even after solving it, just because I liked exploring it. That's when competition quietly turned into play. Play is the purest motivation of all. For the first time, I wasn't studying to prove anything, or win anything, or pass anything. I was just playing with ideas. A problem became a puzzle, a kind of meditation. Sometimes I'd draw diagrams, test patterns, chase a thought just to see where it led. Often I'd get nowhere, but it didn't matter. The pleasure was in the attempt. I began to see math not as a mountain to climb, but as a landscape to wander. Some days I explored a single valley, other days I leapt between distant peaks. And the funny thing is, when you stop obsessing over results, you often understand things more deeply. But not every topic lends itself to that kind of playful exploration. Some areas resist it. Sometimes the material just feels inert. And that's when I discover another kind of motivation. That one arises when play isn't enough. At some point, we all encounter math we have to learn but don't love. For me, that was numerical methods. I took the class in university, and I'll be honest, I hated it. I did the bare minimum, got my grade, and promptly forgot everything. My only goal was survival. Years later, though, I became fascinated with how computers simulated differential equations, and there it was again, numerical methods staring back at me. But this time, I approached it differently. I started coding my own solvers, experimenting, testing. Suddenly, the same equations that once bored me became alive. I finally saw their purpose. That experience taught me something simple but important. Education is a personal responsibility. When a class feels dull, the problem isn't always the subject. Sometimes it's our lack of connection to it. If you must learn something, tie it to your curiosity. You might not love linear algebra, but if you are into machine learning, explore how matrices hold neural network parameters. You might not care for probability, but if you love physics, see how randomness explains nature's patterns. Finding that link turns obligation into discovery. And sometimes, when even that doesn't work, when no link seems strong enough, there is one last motivation that never fails. That motivation is community. Math has a reputation for being solitary, but it's one of the most social activities there is. Every proof is a conversation between you and the people who came before you. Every explanation is an act of generosity. I found that sharing math with others kept my curiosity alive when nothing else did. Helping a friend understand a concept or watching someone light up when something finally clicked. Those moments reminded me why I started learning in the first place. When you teach, you clarify your own thinking. When you share, you rediscover your enthusiasm. And when you learn together, the journey becomes joyful again. That, in essence, is what the Academy of Useless Ideas is about. A place to explore math, not for grades or prestige or profit, but for the pleasure of learning itself, a space to share the useless, beautiful thoughts that make us human. So, if you take one thing from this, let it be this. Whatever your reason for learning math, whether it's to impress, to compete, to play, to apply, or to connect, know your why. Your why will evolve. It should evolve. But when you are aware of it, learning becomes lighter, kinder, and more joyful. And if you ever lose your compass, if you ever find yourself wondering why you are doing this at all, come find us at the Academy. We'll help you remember.